Live now to our political editor, Andrew Clennell, who's live with the Prime Minister. G'day, Andrew.
Thank you, Pete. Prime Minister, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew.
So Anthony Albanese has COVID. Does this help your campaign?
Well, I just hope he'll be fine. I had COVID some months ago and sent him some friendly tips about how you can manage it. And so hopefully his symptoms won't be too bad, and I'm sure he'll keep on with the campaign, just as when I had COVID, I kept on with the governing. And just like 50,000 Australians are getting COVID at the moment, and they push on. They've got to get kids to school, run their businesses, look after their work responsibilities. I'm sure Anthony will do the same and will formally rejoin out there on the trail after the 7 days. And I hope his symptoms aren't too bad, and I wish him well.
So I guess there's no mercy from you here, and one of the reasons would be he started a big attack ad campaign on you now, including the bushfires and the vaccine rollout and all these sorts of issues. So this is just the rough and tumble of an election campaign, isn't it? If he's sick, it's kind of tough biggies. Well,
as a government, as Liberal and Nationals, we'll continue to be setting out what our positive plans are. I mean, we've got an economy which is emerging from this pandemic stronger, and then all of the advanced economies in the world. We've got economic plans which are seeing unemployment fall to 4%, and we believe can fall further. We've had a massive turnaround in the budget in the last 12 months because of that economic plan, which is delivering real cost of living relief right now to deal with those rising fuel prices we've seen as a result of the war in Ukraine. And so we will get on with that, whether it's investing in manufacturing, building up our defence forces, guaranteeing the essential services Australians rely on, be that in Medicare or others. I note that as we were up at Caboolture yesterday, there was these claims that we would be extending the cashless debit card to the pension. It's just a complete lie. And I'll take every opportunity I can to remind people that when Labor lies about these things, it means they don't have an economic plan of their own. But I'm going to stay focused on outlining the real positive benefits of our economic plan. It means less pressure on rising interest rates. It means less pressure on rising costs of living. That's what strong economic management delivers, and it enables us to invest in our defence forces, which we know when Labor was last in, they cut because they couldn't manage money.
Do you agree the most likely outcome at the moment is a hung parliament?
I think Australians are very concerned about the chaos of a hung parliament. And it's in the hands of Australians to decide that outcome. I've been in a hung parliament, and I know the chaos that can ensue from that. A government that each day has to bargain for its existence is no way to run a country at a time of great uncertainty. One of the great advantages we've had over the last 3 years is we have been a majority government, and that means we haven't had to be going deal by deal by deal to manage the pandemic, and I believe that had a big role in us being able to bring Australia through one of the biggest economic and health challenges we've seen in generations. So uncertainty and chaos, that's what you get from a hung parliament. And by voting for independence, then that's what you're inviting. And I think even yesterday we saw with Allegra Spender there in Wentworth, she made it very clear. She could go with Labor, she could go with Liberal. That's uncertainty.
You really went hard on Labor on China the last couple of days. What do you think they'd do differently on China?
Well, you only have to ask the would-be Labor Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles. He set it out in quite a tome where he actually advocated for the Chinese government to be doing exactly what they are doing, and arguing that countries like Australia shouldn't be warning against that type of activity and should be letting it occur. I mean, I find the Deputy Prime Minister alternate in Richard Marles, Labor's Deputy Leader, advancing that 8 months ago or thereabouts, and then the hypocrisy of trying to criticise the Australian government. I mean, the Chinese government's intentions have been clear for many years. We've always taken that very seriously. We've taken significant actions. But the Chinese government doesn't play by the same rules as transparent liberal democracies. That means there are vulnerabilities in our region. That's why we have to be eternally vigilant, as we are. That's why I've increased significantly, particularly under my Prime Ministership, the investments, the partnerships we're doing with our Pacific family.
Sure.
But it's not an absolute guarantee. The risks from the Chinese government in our region are very, very real.
Okay. But your narrative around China appears to be that you're the strongest and toughest to stand up to them. Yet when it comes to them signing a security agreement with the Solomons, it feels like the government's sort of saying there's nothing we can do about that. You're building nuclear submarines, won't be ready for 20 years. There seems a lot more bark than bite in terms of your China approach at the moment.
Well, I don't think the Chinese government feels that way. That's why they have been fairly activated about whether it was when we first stood up to Chinese government in terms of foreign interference legislation, which was led by my predecessor and supported as Treasurer, the work we've done on foreign investment, the work we did to stand up to China on the pandemic and call for the independent inquiry, all of this, the work we've done with the Quad, with India and Japan and the United States, the AUKUS agreement, all of this has been designed to ensure that we can protect Australia's national interests in a highly dynamic region with a Chinese government which is very assertive. Now, if we'd kept defence spending where Labor had it when we last came to office, which was 1.56% of the size of our economy, if we kept that there and didn't increase it to 2%, which we committed to do, we would have spent $55 billion less on defence than we have. And we're further investing in our defence forces. We've built out our capability. We've invested back in our security agencies and our intelligence services.
Do we need a nuclear deterrent in Australia?
Well, we have arrangements, of course, with our partners and our allies, particularly the United States under the ANZUS alliance, which gives us access to a broad set of options working in partnerships and alliances. What we needed was nuclear-powered submarines, and it was our government that was the first in Australia's history that has been able to achieve access to that technology. Only one other country has achieved that, and that was the United Kingdom back in 1958. So we've got access to that. It was the right decision to change. It was a difficult decision, and one that we were criticised for, once again, by the Labor Party, who say they don't want to play politics with national security.
We're nearly out of time. You're a PM known to rely heavily on focus groups and polling, perhaps more than any other PM.
Based on what, Andrew?
Well, I'm aware in the formulation of budgets, you often test some of the ideas.
That's an assertion which I don't share.
OK, well, even when you took your net zero emissions plan to Cabinet, you produced polling at the time to show what people thought about climate change.
Andrew, doing net zero by 2050 was the right decision for the country. Investing in essential services, making sure we manage the economy well so we can put downward pressure on interest rates. I mean, they're the right things to do. That's what drives me.
And but you're big on research. You're a former state Liberal director. Yeah, I'm not trying to insult you here. I'm just saying that's true, isn't it?
No, your assertion is that that's what drives decisions, and I reject that. What drives our decisions, and my decisions as Prime Minister, is the national interest, what's right for the economy. And this election is about the economy, because the economy is going to determine the Australia that people live in over the next decade. It's going to determine what they're paying on interest rates. It's going to determine what the unemployment rate is. It's going to determine the economic opportunities that young people in this country are growing up with. And if the economy is not managed well, we saw what happened last time. We saw medicines on the pharmaceutical benefit scheme not listed because Labor couldn't manage money. That's what the economy's about. It's not an end in itself. It's not a trophy on the wall saying we've got a great economy. A strong economy is what enables Australians to have opportunity and to be able to plan for their own future with confidence.
Just finally, we got a couple of questions at the People's Forum the other night about Integrity Commission, integrity in politics. If you don't have politicians subject to public hearings or search warrants with your model, isn't it a bit of a protection racket for politicians?
Our Integrity Commission model has been well designed, 357 pages of legislation, $60 million budgeted for it actually to do its job.
But it
has very strong powers. No, it doesn't. It applies the same rules to everybody, public servants, politicians, and it focuses on issues of criminal behaviour. It isn't a process of trying people, frankly, in the media that we've seen through the ICAC process. It doesn't get into salacious public hearings about who people's boyfriends are and runs people out of jobs, before the Commission has even finalised its hearings.
She resigned. And she chose to resign.
And so you're suggesting that what happened and the way that issue was handled by ICAC didn't contribute to the Premier actually deciding to stand down, and the way that, I think quite disgracefully, matters of her own public life were aired in public I mean, the same thing happened
you
to Barry
condone
O'Farrell.
her
The same
conduct?
thing happened to Nick Greiner. We've seen it too many times. These matters should be done in a proper legal process
Barry O'Farrell
where
misled the
people's all
Commission.
rights are respected. All rights are respected. And that's the sort of serious model that I want. I don't want a show trial. I don't want a kangaroo court.
I understand that.
I want a real integrity
wanna-
commission that's properly funded, that is legislated. Labor Party has a two-page fluff sheet about what their model
Fair
is.
enough, but never
I've
mind
got
that.
real legislation
Daryl
and I've
Maguire-
got real funding.
Daryl Maguire was taking cash from developers to lobby government officials, and he was saying to Gladys Berejiklian, he was talking to her about this on the phone, and she was saying, I don't need to know about that bit. Now, does that all look above board to you, Prime Minister?
And those serious matters of any potential criminality on the part of Mr Maguire can be dealt with under the type of model that we're proposing under our Integrity Commission. Absolutely.
But she wouldn't be examined
Things
under
that
that model.
involve
Is that what-
criminal behaviour. Well, if there's any suggestion, and no one has made that suggestion about Gladys Berejiklian, no one at all. But what we saw in that rather ugly process is as a strong woman's private life paraded through in a I thought just an appalling way. And I think people from New South Wales, I'm from New South Wales, Gladys did an amazing job to help New South Wales through the pandemic. And the way she was treated in that, I just found quite sickening, and I think a lot of people did. That's not the sort of integrity commission that I think works. I think the sort of integrity commission that works is the well thought through one which has proper rules, which protects the integrity of the process and protects the integrity of how government is run. The other point I made the other night, Andrew, is what happens at a Commonwealth level is very different to the things we manage at that level to a state. State governments run gaming, they run racing, they run development and planning and things like that. Very different set of issues. At a federal level, it's the tax office, it's immigration, it's all of these types of issues. And these decisions are also taken substantially, if not completely, by public servants. And our model deals with the public service, it deals with politicians, it's comprehensive, 357 pages of legislation. That's our proposal. And if we're supported at the election, then we can go forward with that. The Labor Party has 2 pages and a lot of hot air.
Prime Minister, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.